so far might seem to be a slow one. The eyewitness teams out there, they could be compared to no one. Keeping me in touch, they're the team to watch, working hard to bring the news to me tonight. I watch Eyewitness News, they're the link between my life and the world. They're the team that's getting better all the time. I watch Eyewitness News on Channel O, they're always right there at the scene. Eyewitness News, you are the biggest part of me.
They were young, raw recruits when they first joined the Marines, but they became Huxley's heroes, a brave, fearless fighting force. Battle Cry, classic World War II drama, Friday night, 7:30. Hello, Channel.
Good evening. Off New Zealand, 8 people are feared dead in a storm which lashed an ocean-going fleet. 4 yachts got into difficulties as they returned from a race to Suva. 3 of the yachts have now been accounted for, but the 4th is believed to have gone down with the loss of 8 lives.
Wreckage from the yacht was spotted this morning along with Lionheart's empty life raft from an Air Force helicopter. The only known survivor is her skipper, Grant Stapleton, who managed to get clear of the yacht just before it sank after striking Cone Rock around midnight. He managed to swim to shore with a female crew member, but she was unconscious when they reached the beach. After failing to revive her, Mr. Stapleton left to seek help. He walked for 2 hours till he reached the nearest house.
He told briefly that there were 8 people on board and that 4 of them were in the cockpit. He was in the cockpit and they were harnessed in and they hit a rock, and very quickly it was hit by a wave from behind, and very quickly they went down.
Visibility in the area was very poor today, and seas were too rough for boats to take part in the search. And a police search of the shoreline failed to locate any trace of the 7 missing crew members. A search for the bodies of the missing crew will be resumed tomorrow.
Prime Minister Bob Hawke began his visit to London overnight with a call on Prince Charles and the Princess of Wales at Kensington Palace. Planned meetings with British political leaders were called off due to this week's general election. So Mr Hawke spoke to Mrs Thatcher and Labour leader Michael Foot by phone from his hotel room. Laurie Oakes reports.
On the 18.5-hour flight from Jakarta to London, Mr Hawke had to turn his attention away from issues like East Timor and prepare himself for the kind of matters likely to come up in talks with royalty, such as a proposed change to the anachronistic system under which state government recommendations to the Queen on vice-regal appointments, say, or imperial honours, are submitted via the British rather than the Australian Prime Minister. When Mr Hawke's Air Force Boeing 707 landed at London's Heathrow Airport, it was met by the Australian High Commissioner in London, Sir Victor Garland, a former Liberal government minister. Mr Hawke has made no secret of his intention to replace Sir Victor very soon, so the High Commissioner was understandably ill at ease. Later, at the Savoy Hotel, where the Prime Minister is staying, an even stranger meeting with Ian Hansen, the chief sculptor from Madame Tussauds' famous London waxworks. Mr Hawke is to join another Australian Prime Minister, the late Sir Robert Menzies, among the exhibits at Madame Tussauds.
You're an unlikely-looking Delilah.
Among other things, Mr Hansen had to match the Prime Ministerial eyes. Before leaving Indonesia, Mr Hawke had again predicted that Australia would eventually become a republic, but his only official engagement on his first day in London was at Kensington Palace. Prince Charles and Princess Diana had invited the Hawkes to tea. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will lunch with the Queen at Buckingham Palace, and later he'll meet the Queen Mother at the opening of a new Australian Studies Centre. The British press has made a great deal of an avowed Republican meeting so much royalty in such a short time.
I find nothing unusual in these visits. I've already met Prince Charles and Princess Diana, had an enjoyable time with them, bounced the future King of England on my knee, and...
future King of Australia, sir?
Oh, that's a long way down the track.
Mr Hawke did talk to British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and Labour opposition leader Michael Foot, but only by phone and only briefly. The problem is that with Westminster empty while all the politicians are out on the campaign trail, and apart from the cricket, which Mr Hawke will spend several hours watching at the Oval, royalty is the only game in town. Sometimes it's not easy being a Republican. Laurie Oakes with the Prime Minister for Eyewitness News.
Britain's opposition parties have launched a last-ditch offensive to prevent a landslide victory by the Conservative Party in Thursday's general election. Mrs Thatcher's lead in the opinion polls is 15%, which would give her the biggest election win in 50 years. But we begin this report with a look at the way moderate Catholic candidates in Northern Ireland are having to deal with extremists supposedly on their side.
Election week in Northern Ireland, a police station rocked by a huge bomb, neighborhood stores gutted by fire, all Protestant targets hit by Catholic extremists. This was the campaign headquarters of a candidate for Parliament, another target of Catholic extremists. So the candidate must be Protestant, but he isn't. He's a Catholic. John Hume, a respected moderate, and the advocates of violence want to finish him off politically.
Yeah, this campaign is a straight choice in the Catholic community between the forces of politics and constitutional politics and the forces of violence.
Martin McGuinness, candidate of the Sinn Féin party, which endorses violence to force the Protestant British from Northern Ireland. This is what happened when a middle-aged woman put a Hume sticker on a McGuinness campaign car. Another moderate Catholic candidate stays inside his barricaded house, which has bulletproof windows. A TV camera monitors visitors. Jerry Fitt is afraid to campaign among his fellow Catholics.
And it only takes one shot to kill anyone, so I don't make myself an easy target.
Fitt's opponent, Jerry Adams, walks around the district without fear. Adams is one of 14 Sinn Féin candidates in Northern Ireland, and none of them talks tougher than Adams. He advocates an assassination campaign against British and foreign businessmen to discourage investment. This in Northern Ireland, where the unemployment rate is the highest in Europe. And yet the poorest Catholic families all have a good word to say about Jerry, a lad from the Catholic ghetto who doesn't kowtow to the British.
Not only is the factory Margaret Thatcher visited today the world leader in marzipan making, it also, according to the Conservative Party official handout, processes nuts. This was yet another occasion for white coats. We all had to wear them this time. Mrs Thatcher was also fitted out with a frilly white hat. The Prime Minister was shown around the debitterizing room and a place where nuts which are not up to standard are rejected. Mrs Thatcher had a go at it and seemed to enjoy herself very much. She went on to Croydon to address Conservative Party workers.
I urge you to work every hour that is left until the end of polling day, and to urge everyone to come out. I don't want any apathy in the Tory party.
Everything had gone splendidly. There was even a bouncing baby on hand. But then there was a surprise, a challenge from David Steele and his battle bus.
Chasing Mrs Thatcher hard in the opinion polls, Mr Steele decided to try and catch up with her in person. He ordered the battle bus to make a diversion. The bus had cruised past the Tory meeting before she arrived, but when Mr Steele returned, he found the Prime Minister too quick on her feet for him. She was into her car and away just as his bus was about to pull round the corner. Car and coach passed, going in opposite directions. Mr Steele greeted the Prime Minister over his public address system and said he could see her smiling. She must have been smiling at the bus, he said, because she'd never been known to smile at him.
You may not have heard of this man, and yet the latest opinion polls show him to be the most popular politician in Britain at the moment. He's David Steele, the 45-year-old leader of the Liberal Party. Until last year, the Liberals were a dying breed. There hasn't been a Liberal government here since the First World War. But then along came the leader of the new Social Democratic Party, Roy Jenkins, and his Labour rebels. They formed the Alliance, billed as the new alternative in British politics. The Liberals were reborn.
I have the good fortune to be the first Liberal leader for over half a century who's able to say to you at the end of our annual assembly, go back to your constituencies and prepare for government.
But after the initial jubilation came a slump. The Liberal SDP alliance went into this campaign with declining popularity. It's only in the last few days that they've recovered enough ground to even look like toppling the Labour Party as a real alternative to Mrs Thatcher. Many voters see the alliance as an alternative to extremism, Conservatives on the right wing, Labour on the left. The alliance policies are definitely middle of the road. But in these elections there are other extremes too. Mrs Thatcher's looking forward to a landslide victory. On the other hand, Michael Foot's Labour Party is heading for its most crushing defeat. Labour is in real trouble. The great party suffered mass defections last year to the SDP, and its star performers in these elections have received less than rave reviews. Labour's main task seems to be rousing the party faithful.
Our job is not to rouse our faithful, but to convince and convert those who are seeking a new politics.
And according to the opinion polls, that strategy is working. The alliance has remained steadfast in its belief that it is the new force in British politics. By Friday, it might just come true. This is Scott Chisholm in London for Eyewitness News.
American actress Shirley MacLaine refuses to identify a foreign politician whom she says was her lover in the late 1970s. The torrid affair is spelt out in detail in her latest autobiographical book titled Out on a Limb. It was launched in Dallas, Texas overnight. The world's press has been speculating about the identity of the man Miss MacLaine refers to simply as Jerry. Here in Australia, her friend of several years, Andrew Peacock, has denied he's the mystery man. But in Britain, Fleet Street is sure Jerry is English. All Miss MacLaine would say is that the mystery politician is definitely not Margaret Thatcher.
An invitation to breakfast with the author turned out to be scrambled eggs with 2,000 others in the Regency ballroom. Shirley MacLaine, blonde in this role and looking 10 years younger than 49, was selling her book to America's biggest literary fair. Her former lover, Jerry, allegedly a prominent British politician, earned only a brief mention. But in between rambling on about flying saucers, Shirley MacLaine did say intimate details of the affair were only known to a 300-year-old Irish ghost called Macpherson. We know that Jerry is supposed to be a big bear of a man who likes tweed and wears fur gloves. And if he's British, then he's supposed to be worried that this affair would damage his party's election chances. But all this, of course, is set in an earlier period during an earlier election. Finally, after resisting interviews and comment for a week, Shirley MacLaine faced a news conference today with Fleet Street crouching at her feet.
Jerry was many people, as we all are. And who's ever victorious on Thursday, I would have to say that Jerry won.
Is his Britishness part of the compositeness, or is he British?
Part of the compositeness.
So will you tell us...
Compositeness to us.
Will you tell us that he is British?
No.
Will you tell us who he is?
No.
Miss MacLaine, in your...
I mean, never have so many been so ridiculously intrigued with so little for so long. It is not any of our finest hours.
Miss MacLaine...
He was. I didn't tell you he was a British MP.
Was Jerry a British MP?
I'm not going to answer any more questions about the specific identity of Jerry.
And so the mystery remains. Perhaps this literary love affair is just a series of red herrings. Shirley MacLaine, a middle-aged lady now, is into reincarnation and mediums. The best guess is that Jerry is a little bit of Sweden, Australia and Britain, all rolled into one in her imagination.
In the constant battle to stay ahead of technological change in the Soviet Navy, the United States has developed a new class of guided missile cruiser. And when a significant number of these ships join the American fleet, the Navy expects to have turned back the growing naval threat from the Russians. The first of these new supercruisers is the USS Ticonderoga.
Ticonderoga, just returned from 4 months of testing and exercises, is the only one of its kind on the seas. The Ticonderoga is the lead ship of the new Aegis class of guided missile cruisers. About her, it has been said that no other ship in the world packs as much power in as little tonnage. How does it do it? With computers. The Ticonderoga has the most sophisticated air defense system in the world.
We can tell the system what to do before the battle So as the battle is ongoing and the threat is getting hot and heavy, the system can respond and minimize the people involvement.
These panels are the radar system that can find and track hundreds of aircraft and missiles from the top of the waves clear up to the stratosphere, and do it all at once. Its commander flatly disagrees with an earlier House Appropriations Committee report that accuses the ship of being sluggish and overweight.
When I'm jogging, I've been criticized being too slow and overweight also, but as far as the battle group operations are concerned, it succeeded its requirements.
The Ticonderoga needs fewer crew members to run and maintain her than a similar-sized ship. And that, dear taxpayers, is what $1 billion will buy you in today's Navy.
That's it for World News tonight. Paul Bongornio will have the Brisbane forecast for Wednesday and weather conditions overseas after this break.
Recognize somebody you know? Somebody who may not even realize that her tax is too high, or who's desperately worried about how to invest his lump sum super safely, or who doesn't realize that his money is deflating at about 12% a year. These are the problems the people at United Capital sort out, advising how to keep your money secure, how to keep it growing. Phone to arrange a personalized investment portfolio.
Celebrate any occasion with 2 great wines from Stock. Stock Gala Spumante, Stock Gala Gold. This is sweet, and this is medium dry. For any reason, Stock Gala Spumante, the original Australian Spumante, and Stock Gala Gold, the drier alternative.
Catch a Tiger deal wearing Leach Motors seal. Oops! For over 49 years, I've been with the Tiger Deal team at Leach Motors. And they're still giving the best Tiger deals in town on Camira supercars, automotive technology in its finest form. Or for the more sedate, trap yourself a Tiger deal on a new Commodore, the advanced Australian. If you prefer the cuties, get your teeth into this little Gemini. What a dreamboat! Don't you be caught lying around. Catch your Tiger deal at Leach Motors, Windsor.
Richard Gere is Jesse Lou Jack, and this time he ain't no gentleman in a hot new movie, Breathless. He's got to get to L.A., get his money, get his girl, and get to Mexico. He'll break rules, he'll break laws, and he'll break your heart. It's all or nothing for Richard Gere in Breathless, rated R.
Breathless.
Thursday at the Hoyts Entertainment Centre, the Cooper's Plains Drive-In, and Friday at the City Cinema, Ipswich.
Time for the weather report with Paul Bongornio. A little thin on top, but more than just a pretty face.
Thanks for the vote of confidence, Des. Let's have a look at the satellite picture today. And not much that can be seen in Queensland. If you look very closely, you can see some cloud coming up through western New South Wales. It's associated with this bright cloud down south here that's a low pressure system. Have a look at the weather pattern. That'll tell us a little bit more about tomorrow's weather. And this low and front here is moving northeast. It's going to bring a southwesterly change into Brisbane late tomorrow afternoon. That'll be a dry, gusty change, and we should remain fine. Have a look at the capital city forecasts for tomorrow. Darwin and Perth should remain fine. Adelaide, Hobart and Melbourne are expecting showers. Canberra will be cold and windy, and in Sydney it'll be cool and windy. The viewing area should remain fine tomorrow with a freshening south to southwesterly change. Brisbane's temperature range 12 to 22 degrees. On to weather in world centres. Amsterdam will be clear and mild. Athens clear and hot. Good weather for our sports reporter Peter Adams. He's visiting the motherland at present. And London's going to be fine for Prime Minister Hawke when he meets the Queen. New York will be clear. Paris very warm. And Singapore clear with a top of 33. And there's the weather report for the jet setters. Desmond.
Thanks, Paul. That's Eyewitness World News for this Tuesday, the 7th of June. Don't forget that there'll be more Eyewitness reports from 7 o'clock in the morning in Good Morning Australia. I'm Des McWilliam. Good night.
Saturday night in Magman.
I was wondering if you would accompany me.
Accompany you where?
To the reading of Mr. McLeish's will.
A wealthy practical joker leaves his fortune to Tom Selleck.
There must be a mistake.
Come on, we can work something out. Something fair. I mean, it's $50 million.
But there was a motive to his madness.
And I've been murdered. And now I want you to find out which one of them it was.
You're not implying That I might have killed Wilson.
You just did. At least nobody's shooting at you.
Tom Selleck, television's hunkiest sex symbol. Meet him in Magnum, Saturday night, 7:30 on Channel O.
One day, we'll put in a swimming pool.
We'll take a holiday in Europe.
I'll buy myself a new car.
One day, we'll build a family room.
One day, I'll buy a boat.
One day, talk to Westpac about our personal loans. We think they're the best. Together, we'll roll our sleeves up, work out how much your loan will cost, how to afford it, even how to ensure your repayments. We usually say OK the same day.
One day.
One day.
Today.